Hello everyone, welcome to week 3. I'm going to jump back to last week, and thanks almost everybody I believe, for submitting your analysis, your brief comments about different cultural perspectives, and I'm looking forward to reviewing those. Keep in mind that is a participation activity that I'm not going to give a lot of feedback on. However, hopefully it's building into the quiz for this week, which you will find on Moodle under this week's activities. You're going to find a series of things. This video will be at the top, and then you're going to see another item that is a description of the readings for this week, which includes a chapter, the chapter 3 from your book. I'm going to start there, and this week kind of wraps up actually the historical part of the course, which is kind of a bummer. I would actually love to teach an entire course on the history of disability and special ed, as I've probably said before, but I just can't do it within the context of this course. So this is kind of wrapping it up with quiz 1. So if you look at that first, that's readings for this week in quiz 1. It's all embedded right there. Chapter 3, make sure you've reviewed all the materials I've shared, and I'm adding 2 more. So you're going to want to, for this week, so you're going to want to look at these other 2 resources before you do the quiz, and then embed some of the resources into your quiz 1. Okay? There's a pretty thorough description there about quiz 1, so I'm not going to go over that to keep the video as brief as possible. But the first additional resource you're going to see is Disability Social History Project. This has been around for quite a while, and it's a website with a pretty comprehensive timeline of disability-related issues, and it also lists a lot of topics and people on the website. I've always just really liked it. It's created by people with disabilities and just really comprehensive. So I'm not being super directive with that, but I do want you to review it and just kind of let your interest take you through and see if there are things that catch your eye. So and then the next item is, it's actually a PDF, and I'm opening that now. So if you will, go ahead and open the PDF. The first thing you're going to see in the PDF, there's actually like 3 different documents. There's a thing about our history and disability that you've read some about in the materials, but the eugenics movement, which is kind of a sad part of our history, I suppose, and also, as you've probably read or heard elsewhere, that our eugenics movement is what gave Hitler his ideas about how to have the perfect race. So the idea being that if you can weed out all fill in the negative word that you would like to use, but all the bad people, what we would call people with disabilities, in what's currently the most appropriate way to refer to that group of people, to weed them out, you can do that through basically selective breeding practices, or what was called the eugenics movement. So Hitler got his ideas from what we were actually implementing within this country, and it's really interesting, from a political point of view. What we consider progressive people have often been the people who have pushed things like institutionalization in the eugenics movement. And it's interesting because, as I mentioned in an earlier video, these are always methods that we think at the time are positive and good, and to use that word, quote unquote, progressive, they often turn out to be kind of bad and hateful things when we look back on them. So eugenics is certainly one of those things. Not only is it kind of bad and immoral by most standards, it's also basically ineffective. And so if you go to, let me see, sorry, I'm flipping these around. You go to the next PDF. This is kind of a classic. You may have heard about this in a intro to psychology course, or sociology course is actually where criminal justice is where I learned about it. Sorry, I'm rotating it. You might want to do that too with your software. But it's the story of the Kallikaks, Martin Kallikak, and it's just a fascinating story that's tied into kind of the eugenics concept of that, you know, it's all about breeding. So it's, you know, nurture versus nature, that it's all about nature, and, you know, kind of, so if you look at the figure, you start on the left hand side, and I just even love the terms. He dallied with a feeble-minded tavern girl. So feeble-minded would be what kind of the R word of that time. And then on the other side of his family, so this is a guy who had two families, right? One was with, he dallied with a feeble-minded tavern girl, and the other he married a worthy Quakeress, right? So you just kind of continue down the line here, and this was passed as good evidence, solid evidence, that, you know, this is why we should intervene on people having offspring, having children. And, you know, there's a long history here of people with disabilities being sterilized against their will, without their consent, with the belief that that's the way we could keep people with disabilities from being born. And this can, you know, this could be quite controversial, but, you know, there's also things that are prenatal approaches that maybe through a historical lens, many years down the road, maybe we'll look back on those practices and see that in a similar light. But kind of a take-home message here is that what we know now is that, you know, these approaches really don't work. There are always going to be people with disabilities. How that notion is socially constructed is also going to change, but we really can't have what some might consider the perfect race. And, you know, many of you who interact on a regular basis with people with disabilities, from my point of view, the world would be a much less beautiful place without them. So the next figure I want to show you here, this is from, we'll talk a lot more about IQ testing later in the class and its historical role, but also, you know, actually its current roles within our schools and some of the issues related to that. But if you look at this third document, you'll see some pictures from the Stanford Binet actual testing book of how a psychologist might determine if somebody had a disability or not. And it's simply a couple of pictures, side-by-side pictures of people. One who looks like a you know, actually kind of, I'm looking at him, kind of looks like Donald Trump. And then the other person looks like maybe he could have a disability, I suppose. And same with the picture of a female. Point being, you know, how we make these judgments about people and how we determine if they have disabilities has been very subjective. I would argue that it's still subjective in many ways, and that the usage of things like IQ testing is not necessarily a good way to categorize people. The history of that assessment has a quite long history, and it's quite controversial. We'll talk about that more as we move into the evaluation process. I just wanted to kind of wrap up this unit with showing you some of these historical documents of where we've been within our field on a macro level, And then now we're going to start talking later. You're going to finish the quiz, and then we're going to move into more special ed specific information. So this kind of concludes this historical point of view on disability. And I'm looking forward. Have fun. People think I'm nuts when I'm saying this stuff, but have fun with your quiz. Take your learning in your own hands and really reflect on the questions that I'm asking you. I hope, if you haven't already, that you really dive into the material from this course. I hope you're finding it intellectually stimulating. So, as I always say, please get in touch if you have any questions. Get that quiz turned in by next Thursday, if you will. So thanks very much, folks, and I look forward to seeing you.